What is the legacy that you want to leave when you are no longer here? And I hope that's many years from now. But what is it that you're going to leave behind?
Yeah, I think someone said to me the other day after we lost Graham, there were so many great stories about Graham. And he said, all we really are is stories. That's in years to come, that's all you ever really were, is you're a story, you're a memory. So Graham had thousands of them, and they all end with a laugh and a smile, which it speaks quality. So I would love to have the ambition that there's a story out there.
From your perspective, what do you do to switch off when you're not working? Because you do need to recharge the batteries.
Yeah, not my superpower, I must admit. Always very active, but I like my busy brain. I'm a dyslexic person, got a very busy brain, sleep like a baby, wake up at 5 and it's on it straight away. My witching hour is about 4 o'clock in the evening or afternoon. I used to do a huge amount of sport, lots of running, always out, a few dodgy knees after some football. We've kind of put paid to that. So actually it's kind of, what can I go and really control?
Hello and welcome to Confessions of a Successful Leader, hosted by me, Andrew Tallents, the self-coaching expert. In each episode of the show, we hear the insightful confessions of a successful leader who wants to inspire others to live their professional and personal dreams. I am always keen to hear your feedback, particularly in relation to the kinds of leaders you would like me to invite onto the show in future. But for now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the rich insights from our special guest.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Confessions of a Successful Leader, hosted by me, Andrew Tallents, the self-coaching expert. I'm delighted to say that Matt Wragg has joined me in the studio today. Matt, welcome.
Good day, good afternoon, good morning to you, Andrew. How are you doing?
Doing really well, thanks. Really looking forward to hearing your story today. But before we do that, we always like to ask our guest to tell themselves a little bit about themselves. So what about you? Tell us who you are and where your current focus is.
Yeah, hi. I'm Matt Wragg. I'm the CEO of a company called Gattaca PLC. I suppose it's a large STEM talent company. Has about 5,000 people working for us somewhere around the world each day on the London Stock Exchange. I've been here 23 years, so joined as a trainee, not knowing what the hell I wanted to do, and 13 different jobs in a business that I love until I succeeded into the job a couple of years ago. We all jump to the professional bit, don't we? So yeah, I'm a dad to one, husband to one, surrogate dad to a few nephews that have come and gone over 7 years. Very purpose-driven individual, love a challenge. Yeah, certainly have enjoyed. I feel a bit of a fraud being on a podcast about successful leaders. I don't know if I'm in that category. I wouldn't put myself in that category, that's for sure, but certainly happy to share some of my experience and stories and just hope it helps.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And what's really interesting about what you said, and it's very normal for people to come on the show and say that, I think there's this real interesting aura that people actually place onto you. They put you on a pedestal, they see the role that you have, the number of employees you have, and so they're the people that are usually saying that you're the successful leader, and of course there's a different sort of perception behind that. So one thing I'm interested in, because you're a very busy, purpose-driven individual and you've got a big responsibility there, obviously it's a PLC. From your perspective, what do you do to switch off when you're not working? Because you do need to recharge the batteries.
Yeah, not my superpower, I must admit. Always very active, but I like my busy brain. I'm a dyslexic person, got a very busy brain, sleep like a baby, wake up at 5 and it's on it straight away. My witching hour is about 4 o'clock in the evening or afternoon. I used to do a huge amount of sport, lots of running, always out, a few dodgy knees after some football. We've kind of put paid to that. So actually it's kind of, what can I go and really control? So I found myself getting more into, I'll go and build a cabin, build a shed, build a patio, whatever it is, just something that I can start. And my wife might argue I don't actually ever quite finish it, but for me there wasn't something there. Now there is something there. That's really become my vice over the last few years, but before that it was the challenge of, I'll get dropped somewhere and I'll try and run 20 miles home and see how we get on. But switching off, I don't think it's my superpower. I'm sure we'll get onto it, but I come from family-run business where the business was number one child, and therefore business isn't something separate for me. It's absolutely entwined. So I'm not from I'm going to burn out, but I constantly do think about it, and actually it's a positive distraction as well at times, which is great.
Well, that's going to be the topic for today, so I really appreciate you bringing that up now. So to take us back, every childhood is different, and obviously you've given us a glimpse there. What was it like for you growing up, and what did you become aware of about how it informed that early leadership style of yours?
From a postcode lottery point of view, it was I was lucky. Came number 3 child into a happy, settled family. As said, business was number 1 for sure. So I think I was baby number 4. But yeah, a very active. Mum was FD, dad was MD. Saw them both suited and booted, running a business Monday to Friday, and then all 5 of us would have been in the down at the factory in the plant over the weekends, doing whatever it took to get the business right. So whether it was seeing my dad fixing a bathroom, or whether it was cleaning the place, or whether we as kids were doing filing or sweeping up swarf or whatever it was, that for me was like a really, like, work ethic was massive in our family, kind of approach that you do whatever it takes to take your business be successful in it. There was no kind of hierarchy, even though they were the leaders. It never felt like that. And that's really stuck with me through my style of business for the last 20 odd years, that's for sure.
Sure. And then what can you remember in terms of the balance between, obviously when you're growing up in that kind of environment, you know, the academic side of it, the friendship making side, the stuff that outside of the kind of the business bubble? What was it like as a child then?
Yeah, I think neither of my parents really had anything more than 11 plus. So we had a good education as kids. We went to some good schools, but there was no pressure to have to follow a certain path. Almost at a point in later years, I kind of look back and go, well, I wish I'd felt a bit more. It was very much, well, where do you want to go and what do you want to do? And so, it was a non-pressurized but nice environment that we were put into, and really just a very, very active. We were very sporty kids, very busy family, never felt like we were ignored or forgotten. It wasn't like I had 2 high-flying parents who were away at work and we never saw them, because we were with them at work, and we collectively knew, 5 of us, if it was going well, we all knew it, and if it was going badly, we all knew it, and that just felt very normal. So very, very much in it together emotionally, I suppose, which was a nice learning. And yeah, the kind of almost just a childhood of, you realised, wow, okay, at some point businesses that go through struggles. And I remember vividly, probably I must be at 10, 11 years old, wondering why suddenly Christmas has got really, really tight. And actually it's 2-3 years of mum and dad not really paying themselves anything in order to keep it going. And that was just normal. And you kind of saw the sacrifices through really difficult times, and you enjoyed the goodness through the other times. So yeah, that was a big part of it. And if I wasn't doing that, I was kicking a football or chasing something or running somewhere. I've always been a big challenge person. So I worked out very early on, if I was, there's lots of things I always wanted to do, but if I ever actually verbalized I was going to do something to other people and socialized it, there was very, very rarely anything that stopped me going to make sure I did that. I never wanted that pressure of, I didn't quite do that.
Well, that leads us nicely to trying to understand, at the earliest age you can remember, being shaped in that kind of family environment, and the good years and the bad years. What was the earliest dream that you can remember in terms of what you wanted to make your life like?
I don't know. I've always had that, but maybe it's the environment I was brought in. It was a very safe environment, very encouraging environment. I never kind of worried that it wouldn't work out. So it was, I never dreamed to kind of this ridiculous aspiration that had any kind of crystal view in it. But I also never kind of worried that it wouldn't be all right. There'd be a way. So therefore I wasn't ever kind of going, right, I must become that. I had aspirations of being an architect, but frankly, I was never going to be good enough to be doing that. But it was more just get into business, get to work with people, have challenges, and back yourself. That's exactly how it transpired, as it turned out in the end.
And what I'm interested in here as well, because the audience will relate to this if they've come from a similar background, which many of them have, which is why they're doing what they're doing now. But I'm interested, you had 2 siblings, apart from the business, obviously number 1, but 2 siblings. Did they grow up differently to you in that sense, or were they also had those aspirations of being in business like yourself?
No, like any family, we've got our DNA, and probably put us in a lineup and you definitely say they're related. But no, I've got My eldest, the eldest of the group is my brother. He's in the police force. He's just about to come up to retirement. So he's almost done his 30 years stint. Didn't ever really want anything to do with the family business at all. That just wasn't what he was about. My sister is a doctor in psychology, exceedingly smart, helping lots of people out, very, very altruistic, does some amazing things to help people out. And there's definitely some commonality in there that we both really love supporting people and nurturing people. I took that down a far more commercial route. She took it down a different path. Yeah, and then myself, the kind of cheeky, ambitious, can do anything, get into business type individual. So yeah, you put us in the lineup, there's some similarities. You put us on LinkedIn profiles and you go, wow, that's for similar beginnings, completely different paths, which I just find beautiful. Like what we do as a business is we've helped 250,000 people find careers. We're always engaging with people of what they could and what they want to be doing. So I always love the fact there's a real difference between just individuals who have a similar background and what they want to go and do and what they can go and do as well.
Absolutely. So what you've demonstrated there is, what you ended up doing in terms of your life was partly nature, DNA, and partly nurture in terms of what you grew up in. So talk to us about your 20s and obviously that experience of working, and therefore you were starting to generate your own leadership style about how you led yourself, but also your relationships with those around you in business. So just talk to us about that decade.
Yeah, I suppose I started with a lot of luck. One, I looked about 8 years old when I was about 20. So from a professional point of view, I kind of knew that I wasn't very credible the moment people saw me. So that put an instant chip on your shoulder as to how am I going to be credible, because I know they're thinking I'm not. I also had the industry I work in is not an industry most people grow up dreaming to be in. You don't grow up wanting to be a recruiter, but lots of people do it, and it's a fantastic industry. And equally, you don't follow an academic path to become one. And probably sitting there with a family business that I did know and loved and very business orientated, probably had some parents who thought, is he going to take this on or is he going to follow some professional path? And I ended up in this industry. So it's probably started with a big bit of luck of needing to really prove that I'd made the right choice to go this path rather than the more obvious paths. But that style of, and it probably took me quite a few years actually, of when you begin your career, I'd certainly would have been on that confidence to arrogance line, depending on who you spoke to. But you start your career not really knowing what you want to do, but just wanting to have a nice time, earn some good money, work it out, and found a great company pretty much first time, which was very, very fortunate. But because of the background within the family, within business, I really remember only being in the organization like 6 months. I knew nothing about anything, but I spoke about our business and what I did almost as if it was mine, because I didn't know any other way of talking about a job. It was, even I think when I stacked shelves at Safeways as a teenager, I probably acted as if meat and dairy was my business and I had to make it the best business in the world if I was going to put my name to it. So yeah, I kind of started with that mindset of got to prove the folks wrong and me right that I've chosen this path. But also that humility and kind of teamship that I'd seen as a kid every day. It was, it quite literally didn't matter if my dad was out and I used to help him at exhibitions, literally selling the business to people and going on client visits, and saw him welding or machining something and sweeping up swarf. That lack of hierarchical control and more of a, this is team, that was there really early doors. It was do whatever it takes as a team member to make each other successful. I would say if there's anyone who knew me at that time, they'd probably go, that's not quite how it felt, Wraggy. They'd be going, Amit, you were really career hungry. You were really, I want to be the best at this. I want to break that record. I want to do more and more and more. And I absolutely did. But my mindset was never about, but that's where I want to stay. It's just that I want to learn more. I want to do something else. And I've worked that one out. What else can I do? And I've always been really happy along that way. And it's served me really well over the years. And it was luck rather than design. I've been really happy to get into something, do it, work it out, make it a bit better than it was, and then hand it over to someone else so I could go on and do more. And I've talked throughout my career about trying to make myself redundant every sort of 2 to 3 years by bringing in great people to take on what I'd started so that I can go on and do something else, because I got itchy feet and I like doing lots of different things. And so I think those things are, in those 20s and 30s, it was always, I don't know where I want to get to, but I know I want to keep learning. I know I love a challenge. So I never asked for a promotion. I never asked for a different job. I just let people know that I'm up for a challenge. And if you give it to me, I'm going to throw everything at it. And that just served me well throughout the years. And for someone who does have itchy feet, I've been here 23 years. I think I've had 12 different jobs in that time. And each one of those has just been there's a different opportunity or there's a different problem. Let's see if Matt's up for taking that on.
Great. And I think it was Marshall Goldsmith, who a very experienced coach in the US, coming towards the end of his career now, and very interesting to hear his teachings. He came up with this phrase: is you get to a certain point in your career when you've been very successful doing the way you've been doing it, but actually what you've been doing to get you here won't get you there. And that's usually when we're sort of going that next level, different stakeholder management, more complexity. What was that moment for you, Matt?
Vividly, and I talk to our new starters about it still now. I had a time where I was leading the client pursuit team in our business, and we'd had a really good run of it. And I knew if I could close that one more major contract, that was my ticket to get to our management board, which wasn't the exec, but it was I knew I could probably be the youngest person that got been working for it. And as part of that process, one of my predecessors now put me on some coaching, and it was very much about letting go of that chip. I'd always been pushing to get somewhere, and it was that realization of, I'm actually there, behaving in the right ways and doing the right things. I don't need the title or to be in that team to actually be the person I was trying to be. So I was chasing, and then just as you're about to go and get it, I probably don't actually need. I felt really balanced for the first time. It went from a race about how far I can take Matt and switch really quickly into, right, now that I've got the skill set, how can I help other people? I became a dad at a very similar time, and I think that's for me was a massive life-changing moment in humility and the reality of everything's about protecting other people. It's not about so I think all of that combined at a time when just suddenly it went from chase to balance, and spent quite a number of years at that level, quite happy working across a business that I love, supporting a lot of people, and still trying to do the best I could.
I've got a couple of questions on that, which really I'm curious about. So the first is, and this will be useful for the audience, you said obviously you were given a coach, and sometimes that's requested by an individual, becomes aware they need to move into that place, and sometimes a mentor comes along and says, actually, you might want to consider having a coach. What was it for you, Matt?
That's a really good question, and I'm instantly my head was like, yeah, of course I asked for it. It's never as simple as that, is it? So I've always been a very reflective person. I think the sister being the psychologist, and her and I were like best friends as kids. So we've always had the fat chat about everything. We've always been very reflective. I've always been very self-aware. But I'm sure there would have been me going, I've not had a coach before, and if I'm going to be there, am I going to be good enough? But I'm sure if someone was to take the clock back, you would have seen someone else influencing my thought process over a period of time to go, don't you think, and maybe, and therefore it's my idea, but it wasn't. It was probably someone else's idea. So, and actually, I've spoken a few times in the business recently about that, about different steps I've taken on and one of them I've talked maybe for 10 years about how the CEO tapped me on the shoulder and he said it's a perfect job for me, and I got to move across, and it was something completely different for the group, and I felt so backed and so trusted, and went on the 2-3 years of didn't really make much more money, but I learned so much in a short time frame. And it was only literally about 6 months ago I was looking at some of the stuff we were doing as a business, and went, actually the person beside me was a much better people manager, and actually probably what he was doing was clearing me out the way to give him a bigger remit, because he was much better than I was at running a sales team, much better. But I felt super empowered and super, wow, he's got my back. But I bet that actually came from Matt's running a big team, and this other person is much better at running a small team. How do we get, and that for me now is part of my mantra. It's my job is to help everyone in this business to be as successful as they possibly can. And sometimes they can see the path and sometimes they can't. But there's a long answer to a short question, but it is all about others influencing along that journey. I'm absolutely sure.
Yeah, and I think there's that point as well, even if it's suggested or prompted, I think we've still got to be in a place where we are able to receive it, because not everyone is. Yeah. So that's a big step. So let's go into, I'm really curious about when you made that change and started to lose the chip. It never happened straight away, because that was happened to me as well. What did you notice about the people around you and how they changed in relationship with you once you started to be that way?
I suppose initially it's a bit like getting married. It's exactly the same next day as it was the day before. You've just got a different title or a different bank account. So initially not a huge amount. I think certainly the people who worked for me, I think have always felt very empowered. I really like to help people to be as successful as they can. So I think there was probably a real sense of pride of they knew it was a team game and I wouldn't be getting an opportunity if they hadn't done their part of what we all needed to do to be successful to get there. I think it took me years actually from that point to really go from, okay, I've got the position I was after, but did I really have the span of influence? My span of control had increased, but my span of influence in theory was better, but my capability wasn't that much better. So the title didn't change anything, and that took me years. And actually, probably I've been in the CEO role now 2.5. I'd probably spent quite a few years in that previous position thinking, oh, one day maybe I might want to go there. Almost instantly, the moment I thought, actually, is it right for me? Is actually the time it then happened. And I think that was almost that classic of the moment you stop desperately wanting something or thinking that might be the case is often when actually you're probably the most ready for it. And I think it was probably only at that point, that sort of 6 months period around that either side, where I kind of felt, actually, no, I have got that span of influence now. It's not at all about me. It is about how do I enable people? How do I help people see what they're not seeing? How do I help join the dots? So I reckon that took me 4 years probably, from being in a position where in theory you can do it to feeling really comfortable that actually, no, this is possible. And 2.5 years down the line now, I feel professionally and personally, but professionally, the most balanced I've ever felt. I've got probably more pressure than I've ever had, but the least amount of angst I've ever had. And that's been a really interesting and fun dynamic over the last sort of couple of years, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And that comes across as well in your presence today. And it's really good for the audience to understand that it does take time. It just doesn't happen because you make a decision that you're going to change. So that's really good to hear as well. Let's talk about setbacks. Again, we don't hear enough about this from CEOs and leaders, and it's never a straightforward journey. So maybe talk to us about, one setback or something that's happened in your life where you think, actually, yeah, that was tough, but I've managed to, work a way through it.
Yeah, I think any leadership role can be very lonely if you make it. My point at the front end of it of, do I warrant to even be on this podcast? Because who classes what is successful? I think only the paranoid survive, so I'm never good enough. So I'll partner. But fundamentally, any leader is thinking and worrying about all the same things. It doesn't matter whether you employ one person or probably if you've got 100,000 people around the world, we probably all think and worry about the same sort of stuff. And the stuff that goes wrong is probably the same sort of stuff. It'll be recently all the legislation, governments, etc. Or it could be it's always a lot of people. We're a people business. That's our main service. We help people we have people that help people get jobs, or it's economics, or it's winning business, losing business, whatever it may be. So all the problems are the same ones. I think there's probably two major ones. One, on the way up, I vividly remember sat on the motorway on a BlackBerry in Paris trying to review a major bid for something that we definitely should have won. I'd shaped for ages, but I decided to go to Paris to see some other clients about something else rather than dedicating the time to close something that should have closed and finish that properly. And we lost a £20 million opportunity, which we absolutely should have won. And that moment of phoning up my CEO at the time to go, I've mucked up, I've made the wrong decision here. I went for the fun few days in Paris as opposed to the boring few days at a desk to get this done. That was a big learning, which we took on and worked well. The biggest one's probably a bit nearer and a lot more emotional. And throughout most of my career here, I've had, probably took us about a year to find each other, but I've had what turned into my best mate, where we both went on that trainee to leadership level. And when I got the job a couple of years ago, Graham became my CSO. He was my best man at my wedding, my best mate, and probably the biggest character in our business. Feeling really balanced in this job, things starting to go well. I took the first proper holiday in 20 odd years, took my family down to Australia for a month in February to have my other best man's wedding. And unfortunately, the day I landed in Sydney, Graham had an accident on a ski slope in the Alps, and we lost him. And he was my best mate, my right hand in the business, and the biggest cultural character in the business as well. And in no point in my career have I ever not had him available to me, and vice versa. And throughout the 1.5 years in this job before that happened, he'd been my biggest cheerleader, my biggest support, an absolute rock, and probably the reason I had confidence to make bold decisions, knowing that I was backed and supported. So to lose him was a massive hit for me personally, and for the business. And that has been a horrendous year, but also has seen the very best of a culture and a business. And probably for someone, I am quite a vulnerable person. I'm very open, but naturally brought out the most vulnerable scenarios that you can possibly imagine professionally, and seeing how much the business and a team can support each other, including its CEO in a moment like is a time which I will remember with a huge amount of sadness, but I will also know that the very best of the whole business and everything that he helped to make in the business came to fruition. I'm sure that could have been something quite early into a CEO role that could have just completely knocked me off kilter. In fact, actually, it's made me reflect even more and go, well, what were his superpowers versus my weaknesses? And how do I do him a service? How do I be the best I possibly can be at this so I do not let him down and the memory of him down at all? And take that, hopefully, as something, take the best you can from something which is horrendously shit and try and do him service. So yeah, you're always going to have crap stuff that happens, whether it's what seems pretty irrelevant things like you've lost a bit of business or the government's just made it a bit more expensive to run a business. That is really difficult, but you work your way through it. Certainly this year's experience has made me really realize that anything can happen, and being authentic throughout that is the best thing you can possibly do, or the only thing you can possibly do.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that. And
didn't know if I was going to go there actually, but but also
no, I'm pleased you did.
not to.
No, I'm pleased you did, and I think that leads us on to, I guess, the fact that you are feeling that balance now. I know it's been a really tough year and a half, but in terms of how do you as a CEO, once you get to that place where you do feel balanced and feel actually in a place where you can take these things on, how do you maintain that? Because it's so easy sometimes to lose again that, and the negativity creeps in, or the self-doubt or whatever. How do you actually maintain it?
Hey, maybe you should ask me that in a few years' time and see if I have, Andrew. I like to. I listen to Mo Gaudet quite a lot, and one of his bits I really like was about compartmentalizing stuff and kind of creating a time and kind of go boxing things off and go, this is the time where I needed to be protected by the business. This is the time where I'm going to protect everyone else. This is a bit. So what I try to do is kind of break everything down. And every job, whether it's you're a trainee in something or whether you've been there doing it a long time, you're trying to lead a business, it's all about routine and structure. And probably my diary and my structure is not really different than most other jobs. So it's how do you set that structure? And yes, you have a view on, what would I like this business to become over 3 years? But the reality is I never think I'm good enough. Only the paranoid do survive. So at the moment, I'll be Friday, I'm desperate to see how we perform this week. All weekend, I'll be wondering, right, well, are we going to come in Monday full of energy or are we not? I'll be worried about that next week's performance. I'll be worried about my half year performance. I'll be thinking about my full year performance, and I'll be thinking about 3 years. So I think there's that need to kind of go take the moment. And it's probably one of the bits of being a listed business, which I've actually really felt the benefit of, is every 6 months I have to stop and pause, and I have to document everything, and I have to go and tell the city how we've done. And we're 2.5 years in, and that, like, we haven't ripped up trees, but we've completely turned the business around from where we were. It's now definitely going in the right direction. And every one of those, every 6 months, has been a very cathartic session to kind of go, oh, right, actually, yeah, we promised we were going to do all these things, and we've done all of those and a little bit more. So it kind of has helped give me kind of moments of designed, I suppose, reflection to go, I have to go and talk about that. But I then also try to make shorter versions of that myself to go, right now it's about now till Christmas. Just come back from a week off with the family for half term, head down, let's really drive it through to Christmas and we can all get a break again. So most of my mindset will be on that 6 weeks, whilst I'm also thinking more strategically about, right, what shape do I want us to be by the time we get to our year end, and actually what could the market dynamics be the year beyond. So I think it's that dedicated time for those different slots. I think if you try and look at all of it all the time, I could imagine you could get yourself pulled into lots of different directions and not be able to see the wood for trees. It's really helped me to kind of go, what's this week? What's this 6 weeks? What's that quarter? What's my half year? And what's my longer term view without having to hang myself on something, which I don't know is even possible yet.
Yeah, sure. I want to bring back something that you said earlier, and I heard Branson saying a few months ago, and he's repeated it since, obviously, in terms of his dyslexia and the way he now promotes understanding around that. He said that everybody out there is a preneur. You're either an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur. Yeah. And indeed, if you have been diagnosed dyslexic or ADHD or somewhere on that sort of neurodiversity spectrum, that actually you're more likely to be able to be that preneur. So what advice would you give to people out there that are connected with your story, maybe thinking, no, I've actually got more to give and maybe I can do something a bit different? What advice comes to mind for you about how they tap into that?
Just be bold. No one's got all the answers. No one's got all their shit together. Like, if they say they have, they definitely haven't. So just be really comfortable if that's the way you're wired, and if that's the way you think a problem could be solved, give it a go. I talk about being more balanced now than I was, and that's because I suppose if I want to do something now, I can just do it, and that's really empowering. My problem before is if I had a good idea, I've had some leaders who just gave me space. Like, we just need to let Raggy play, and most of them work, some of them won't, but he doesn't really know what he wants yet, but he's got an idea, so let him run with it. I also had a time, because we got to what, I don't know, 1,000 people globally, not far off a billion turnover listed business. It got very corporate, and it was actually every idea you had to have a really, really structured business case, and you had to influence lots of people in order to really get going from it. And I really struggle with that, because it's like every part of my being was telling me we need to go that way, but I didn't know whereabouts that way. I just knew it was right and a long way, and that was really prohibitive. My brain couldn't work out how to do that. So I ended up over a series of quarters, I suppose, building out a team that worked for me, which were really good at that, like really, really logical, structured thinkers and storytellers who could sit in a room and start going, I have no idea what Matt's on about. And we finished the day with this completely new concept, really well structured, that someone else could understand. So I think it was a really big learning of, as an individual contributor years ago, you just had to get on and do everything. So actually, I've got something here. I've got an ability to be innovative and creative and energetic and get things going, but also being really okay with the fact I'm a terrible completer finisher, back to my wife's point on my building work, but other people are excellent. So we ended up having a fantastic team where everybody was playing to their strengths with no egos about it, because nothing was ever going to happen without them doing the massive part of it. So yeah, I think it was that, just being comfortable with it. I'm vocal about it because I've got a number of people in my business of all sorts of different characteristics. I'm a big believer that you can be whoever you want, just like be yourself, be really authentically yourself, and try and make yourself the best version of you. You'll probably be bloody brilliant. I think it's when people try to fake it a little bit and kind of go, well, I like what they're doing, so I'm going to try and copy who they are. You can't copy who someone else is. You can copy a tactic. You can, I do it still now. Like every week I probably hear a word I hear someone use and I go, oh, I quite like that word. And I'll use that and it will go part of my lexicon. But I'm not there. I'm just picking up snippets of other people and going, that feels right for me. So just back yourself, feel confident with it, and don't worry about if there's a load of stuff you can't do. Find great people who love doing that side of it, and you'll have a fantastic team.
Thank you. I've got time for one final question, Matt.
Okay.
And I really appreciate you sharing what you shared before. So what's come to mind for me is that, bear in mind how you've been wired, the environment you grew up in, this drive, what you've been doing now, linked to the way that you want to show up in life and have that balance. What is the legacy that you want to leave when you are no longer here? And I hope that's many years from now, but what is it that you're going to leave behind?
Yeah, I think someone said to me the other day, well, after we lost Graham, there were so many great stories about Graham, and he said all we really are is stories. That's in years to come, that's all you ever really were, is you're a story, you're a memory. So Graham had thousands of them, and they all end with a laugh and a smile, which it speaks quality. So I would love to have the ambition that there's a story out there, but the reality is it's making an impact. My shorter term version is when I finally leave this business, it needs to be a business that my daughter, when she gets to 21, if she comes home and says, I fancy going and getting a job at Gattaca, there's no part of me which doesn't think that's an amazing opportunity for her. It's a safe, great, motivating, challenging, career opportunistic, great business. So if any part of me is a bit, I've failed in my job. So that's my kind of near-term kind of story, hopefully. Beyond that, it's just trying to help. I'll go back to that altruistic bit. If you take my ikigai, it would have a combination of, I want to help people. I've got a huge amount of energy and over the years now a network, and there's a desire to put that to some good. Right now, that's about helping thousands of people make STEM work. But I can very much see that in the future, that we have a massive problem in most countries, but certainly in the UK, about social economic distribution, helping people access markets where, unless you've got a really solid network and your mum and dad or your grandparents know someone, you might not get in there, or if you didn't go to the right university, or if you didn't have the right name, or you don't look quite right, the stats show you don't get in. That's so wrong. In our world, we talk a lot about there's a skill shortage. I don't think there is globally. I just think all the wrong people are in the wrong place at the wrong time. And if we can work out a way to actually bring that together, we've got a much better world. So if I can play a tiny part in, a bit like someone influenced me to get a coach all those years ago, if I can sow a seed of this might be possible to make it so that life is better for everyone to get different opportunities, then that'd be a really great tick. Even if I don't get into it named in that book, if the book gets written and someone's worked it out and I've known them at some point, I'll be well happy with that.
Brilliant. Well, I've loved hearing your story to date, Matt. Thank you very much for all the time you've given today, and thanks again for being on the show.
Not a problem at all. Thank you for the invite.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Confessions of a Successful Leader. You can access all previous episodes of the show at confessionsofaSuccessfulLeader.com. If you are interested in finding out more about conscious leadership and self-coaching, just type in Andrew Tallents into LinkedIn or your favorite browser, and you'll find my contact details and all the content that you need. Until next time, don't forget to stay present, curious, and above all, conscious.